Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me clearly?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much for joining. My name is Huren Zannat. I'm a communication officer in CIRDAP. So today is a very special day as today is International Day of Forest. So there will be a webinar today. So this webinar is the part of CIRDAP webinar series of 2023. So before starting our today's webinar, I want to share something about our organization. The full form of our organization is Center on Integrated Rural Development for Asia and the Pacific. It's an intergovernmental regional autonomous organization for Asia Pacific region. It was established way back in 43 years ago on 6th July 1979. This organization operates through the designated contact ministries and link institution of member countries, and we have three governing bodies: governing council, executive committee, and technical committee. This is our 15 member states maps, and Bangladesh is the host country, CIRDAP's host country. There are the 14 countries map you can see in this picture. Now about our headquarters, this beautiful red house is called Chameli House, which was established in British period in 1920. This was handed over to CIRDAP by the host country of Bangladesh in 1987. Now, I would like to invite our Honorable Director General of CIRDAP, Dr. Charsak Virapat, to say a few words on his welcome remark. Sir.
Thank you very much, Communication Officer. Good morning, dear respected IRD expert of CIRDAP, distinguished participants, and CIRDAP colleagues. I'm pleased to welcome our keynote speaker, Dr. Mohammad Israr, the CIRDAP IRD expert, and each of participants to the webinar entitled International Day of Forests. Today, we celebrate the International Day of Forests at the Center on Integrated Rural Development for Asia and the Pacific, or CIRDAP. The day of 21st of March was established at the United Nations General Assembly in 2012 to celebrate and raise awareness of the importance of forests. The UN member countries are encouraged to undertake local, national, and international efforts to organize activities each year involving forests and trees. The theme for 2023 is Forests and Health. On behalf of CIRDAP, I call for global attention on forest conservation and sustainable management of the forest resources and their ecosystem, because the healthy forests will bring about the healthy people. As you know, forests provide us with direct or indirect multiple socio-economic benefits and environmental services, and in particular on our human health. They purify the water, clean the air, capture carbon to fight climate change, provide food and life-saving medicines, and improve our well-being. Conserving and sustainably using forests is one of the best ways of protecting our planet and ourselves. Healthy forests are vital for all aspects of a healthy planet, from livelihoods and nutrition to biodiversity and the environment, but they are under threat. It's up to us to safeguard this precious natural resource. Thank you very much for your kind attention, and we look forward to hear from our keynote speaker today. Back to you, Ms. Janet.
Thank you, sir.
Good morning.
Sorry for that. My computer difficulties. I was stuck. My PowerPoint was stuck. So I would like to say a simple glimpse about our upcoming webinars of 2023. So next month we will have the webinar on 2 days. One on World Health Day, United Nations World Health Day, and then Earth Day. And then in May, there will be a webinar on the idea of registering the World Goat Day is a cultural action with an economic purpose to honor rural and nomadic livelihoods. And then the webinar on World Environment Day in June. And also in June, another webinar will be held on World Oceans Day. And in July, there will be a webinar on International Cooperative Day and also World Rural Development Day. There will be many more. You can see at our website, www.cirdap.org. Now, about our today's webinar, the webinar will be held on the International Day of Forests and Health, and it will be held. The honorable speaker of our today's webinar is Dr. Mohammad Israr. He is a secretary, and our honorable IRD expert of CIRDAP is secretary from Agriculture, Livestock, Fisheries and Cooperative Department, Government of Khyber, Pakhtunkhwa, Pakistan. Now, a quick few points. We would like to know about where are you joining from. Please let us know in our chat box. And if you have any questions, suggestions, or opinions, please drop by in chat box, or you can ask directly to the speaker after the webinar. And a humble request to all of you, please, during the presentation, mute your microphone. You can join our LinkedIn. You can follow us in social media, Facebook, Twitter. And of course, you can look at our website. There are many more interesting news in our website, www.cirdap.org. Thank you so much. Now I invite our honorable IRD expert, Dr. Mohammad Israr, to start.
Thank you very much, Horain, and good morning to Director General CIRDAP, all the participants who are virtually attending today's webinar on International Day of Forests and Health. So I'm going to share my screen. Is the screen visible to all of you?
No, sir, not yet, sir. It's now shared.
Is it visible?
Yes, it's visible now, sir.
Thank you. So today's webinar is on International Day of Forests, and the theme is Forests and Health. Next. So this will be the sequence which I will be following in today's webinar. That is the introduction. I will dilate upon the forest area of top 10 countries and worldwide the forest area. Then I will discuss about the forest and human health, that what is the health and nutrition as well as forest nexus, then the forest and health positive impacts, and then one health approach, and some of the concepts of zoonotic diseases which are spread from the animal to human beings and human beings to animals. Then forest food, because forests are directly a source of food for some of the communities. So I will dilate upon the forest and foods, then income diversification, and finally, I will discuss the advantages of forest and promotion of health and nutrition, and then way forward and some recommendations, and definitely I will take some of your suggestions for further improvements and your questions. Next. So looking into the forest area, I have focused on the continents. So Europe, South America, North and Central America, Africa, Asia, and Oceania. So if we look into these bars, the blue one are the data of 2005. The black one is data from 2010. And the gray bars are data from 2015. And finally, the red one depicts the data from 2020. And the source is FAO. So looking into this bar chart, you can see that there is a minimal increase in the forest area in Europe. That is from 1.01 to 1.017 in 2020. Similarly, in South America, there has been a little bit change, but it seems that no significant change has been made in the forest area. But if we look into this bar in case of Asia, in Asia, a little bit increase has been reported, like from 593 to 622.69 million hectares. So the total global forest area is 4.06 billion hectares, and these continents contribute as per the data being shown here. In South Asia, some of the Asian countries, like I will take the example of Pakistan, like, we started 10 billion tree tsunami program under the previous government. And the focus was that maximum area. If we look into the case of Bhutan, so they have the indicator of happiness, GNH, gross national happiness, and that is measured in terms of the forest cover. Like, for example, they have brought more area under forest cultivation, and similarly, Nepal and the neighboring countries are trying their level best that maximum area should be brought under the forest, because we are having the threats of climate change and environmental degradation. So that is the reason that most of the vulnerable countries are trying their level best to bring more area under forest cover. Next. So looking into this pie chart, which depict the top 10 countries with forest area, here you can see that the maximum area, Suriname is one of the country, and its total cover area is 98.3%. Similarly, federal state of Micronesia, which is having 91% of its forest area, and Gabon is having 89.3%. Is it visible?
No, sir. No, sir. Now it's visible, sir.
Thank you. Now this pie chart shows the top 10 countries having maximum of its forest area. So on the right side, Papua New Guinea is having 74.1% of its forest area. Solomon Island is having 78%. Lao PDR 81.3%. And Guyana is having 84%, and Palau is having 87%. So these are some of the top 10 countries of the world which is having a maximum forest cover of their available land mass. Next. Here this slide shows that about 820 million people live in tropical forest and savannas in developing countries, and has been reported by FAO in 2018. And major portion of these population depends on forest goods and services for the provision of food, fuel or building material, medicines, employment, and cash income. Because forests are the major source for fuel wood in some of the communities, because they go for cutting of the forest wood and it is burned for cooking purposes. Similarly, most of the wooden material is extracted from the forest, and building materials, they are provided by the forest. Similarly, some of the medicines, the traditional medicines in most of the communities, they are provided by the forest. Millions of small forest owners in developed countries manage and benefit from a vast number of forests. Sometimes there might be the timber products, sometimes there might be non-wood timber products, like most of the honey bees, they are having their hives in forests. So honey is extracted, wax is extracted. Similarly, some of the beneficial insects are rearing on the forest plants, and they are also becoming the ingredients of foods of some of the communities. So small farmers practicing agroforestry are depending on the regulatory and provisioning services of forest and trees in the landscape are approximately 2.5 billion. You know that in most of the countries, the land holding is very small. So along with agriculture crops, they are raising forest trees, which is called agroforestry. In Asia, and especially in Pakistan, this agroforestry was started in early 80s, and most of the farmers were raising the forest trees along with agriculture crops. The role of forest and health in rural populations are very important. And as I mentioned, that forest provides food, livelihood, and income earning opportunities that contribute to food security and nutrition. Similarly, medicinal plants of forest serve as a backbone of traditional medicines, and forests provide fuel wood for cooking, food, and sterilization of water. And it is also a source of spiritual and mental health of many groups of people, particularly indigenous people. You might have observed that in most of the countries for meditation purposes, and similarly in the religion of Buddhism, most of the priests used to stay in the forest and on hilly terrains away from the population, just to have solace of their souls and go for worships there. Next. So this slide depicts some of the impacts of forest. If we are having a maximum forest cover, it goes for carbon sequestration, and it controls the temperature. Air and water purification is made by the forest. Human health and nutrition, they are improved. Income diversification is one of the benefit of forest, and household support. So looking into all these, like for example, if we are having maximum forest cover, so maximum quantum of oxygen is evaporated from the lamina of the forest trees, and it having a soothing effect on the environment, and the people feel happiness over there while breathing in the clean atmosphere. Similarly, it also controls the temperature, because the evapotranspiration phenomena occurs, and similarly the forests are having a healthy effect on the control of temperature, and also provides some of the beneficial food items like honey, mushrooms, then some of the insects which become part of the food. So they are also playing a very important role in the nutrition. Also diversify the income of the local communities, because they either get wood from there, and it is used in various purposes like furniture making, then some of the implements, and in some of the cases the decorative pieces are developed from the wood and it is sold. So it's a sort of support to the household, and giving them an opportunity of earning their livelihoods. The forest, human health and nutrition have a nexus, because forest ecosystem provides edible products for a healthy diet, which includes fruits, leaves, mushrooms, and medicinal plants. Similarly, freshwater resources, flood control, soil fertility, microclimate regulation, and habitat for biodiversity. Here it has been mentioned like flood control. You might be aware of the fact, like in case of floods, mostly the soils are exposed to soil erosion. So the erosion is controlled because in erosion, the soil is washed away and it goes to make the environment very filthy. So if we are having the forest cover, so it controls the soil erosion. And also in case of wind erosion, it can work like a shelter belt to control and reduce the velocity of wind to protect the agriculture crops from damages. And also it improves the soil fertility because the humus or the litter which is fallen from the trees, it is mixed in the soil and it becomes decomposed and adds to the structure and texture of the soil. So it leads to soil fertility and also improve the habitat for the wildlife and for other animals. Forests are vital for sustainable health, well-being, and prevent illness because, as I mentioned, that's having a soothing effect. And in case of meditations, it also improves your mental capabilities and having a freshness, a fresh feeling on your body. Similarly, forest promotes physical, mental, and social well-being on individual as well as communities, and it plays a vital role in nutrition security of masses, especially in rural areas. Next. Now, the positive impacts also includes that population living in or near forests are often distanced from centralized health services. They are not having easy access to health facilities. So they go for the medicinal plants. So rural people rely on traditional healthcare system, which are mostly dependent on forest-derived medicines. And it has been reported in one of the FAO article in 2014 that approximately 1 billion people worldwide use herbal and home remedies to treat children diarrhea. Medicinal plants in forests have been used by humans for at least 5,000 years, and approximately 50,000 plant species are used for medicinal purposes. So you look into this figure of 50,000, like it might be more than 50,000 in most of the regions and continents, that the medicines are derived from the forest plants. Similarly, urban and peri-urban forest woods and green spaces have greater impact on public health. Next. The other positive impacts includes direct contact with nature contributes to a healthier composition of the human commensal microbiota. Similarly, microorganisms living mostly in human gut, skin, and other parts of the body helps their human host by providing essential nutrients, metabolization, and indigestible compounds, and defense against pathogens. So any disease-inducing agent which is called pathogen, they are controlled by these microorganisms which are living in the guts and having a positive role in the metabolism process of human beings to digest their foods. Non-material or amenity benefit from the forest also includes spiritual enrichment and cognitive development benefits. As I mentioned that in ancient times, and Buddhism and other religions, like even in Islam, the saints used to go to aloof and isolated places, which were mostly the forest and the uphills areas. And you might have observed that recently in like in Vietnam, Thailand, and different Asian countries, the spiritual leaders' graveyards are there in these isolated places. So promotes healthy physical activities for fighting non-communicable diseases, such as cardiovascular diseases, cancers, chronic respiratory disease, and type 2 diabetes, which are linked to chronic stress, poor diet, and other lifestyle factors such as insufficient physical activities. If we look into all these aspects, so forests are having very positive role on the human health, and the human health can be improved if we are having forest in the close proximity where we are living. Next. So this diagram shows the malnutrition and infection cycle, because if we are not taking proper nutrition and no balanced diet, it will lead to infections like the first circle indicates that inadequate dietary intake. Like if you are not having balanced food or non-nutritionist food, so if you are not getting enough food to eat, and it directly is linked with SDG 2, which is about the zero hunger. So similarly, indirectly, it also contribute to that SDG. So it will lead to weight loss, that will be stunted growth, and then lower immunity and mucosal damages will be leading towards these diseases will be prevalent if you are not having the nutritional diet. And ultimately, the disease incidence, duration, severity will be more, because if you are weak, you are not having proper immune system due to insufficient nutritional food. So you will be exposed to various diseases. And ultimately, you will lose your appetite and nutritional loss will be there. And ultimately, it will lead to altered metabolism, and ultimately, a number of health consequences will be reported. So the source of this diagram is Kathona and Kathona impact that was 2008. It has been derived from there. Now coming to the negative impacts, we talked about the positive impacts, but there are some negative impacts like the infectious diseases like Lyme disease and encephalitis spread through forest pest vector, because some of the insects might be prevalent in forest areas, and if they sit on one of the diseased person, it transmits the disease to another person. So these are the vectors, pest vectors, which mostly are habitat in forest areas. Other forest-associated diseases include malaria, Chagas disease, African sleeping sickness, trypanosomiasis, and leishmaniasis, and lipatic filariasis. So these are some of the diseases which are prevalent and associated with forests. Land use change and forest loss and fragmentation are affecting the boundaries between forest and inhabited area, which develop new challenges that changing diet and erosion of traditional health related knowledge. So if there is massive growth in the population, ultimately the people will go for cutting of the forest areas, and the forests which are having the positive impact will be ultimately converted into negative impacts. And similarly, we were talking of the smoothness and the positive impacts on the health, it will be converted into negative impacts. So the UN then started a One Health approach, integrating policies in all sectors touching on human, animal, and environmental health is needed of the day. So if we are talking of the forest, if you are talking of the agriculture, if we are talking of the health, or if you are talking of the hygiene and sanitation, so I think all these areas should be covered under One Health, because in case of agriculture, if you are indiscriminately using pesticides and they are having high MRL value, ultimately, if those products are consumed by the human beings, will be leading towards different diseases and carcinogenic type of diseases. So there is a need that either we should go for biopesticides application or safe pesticides, or we can go for the integrated crop management, integrated pest management. Similarly, if you are talking of the fertilizer application, if it is going to drain out in the freshwater stream, it will be having a negative impact on the aquaculture. So I think all these sectors, either that is agriculture, forest, or sanitation, they are all together linked. And if we are cognizant of the healthy populations, so I think One Health approach has to be followed in all sectors of the economy. Next. So this diagram depicts the One Health approach, like healthy foods, forest-based incomes, medicines, wood fuel, enhanced immune functions. Because if you are having forest, it will be leading towards good life standards and healthy population. And if we are having on the other side close contact, emerging zoonotic diseases, sustainable wildlife management. So I think if we are having wildlife and rich forest, so they should be properly managed and should not be having close contact with the human beings, because some of the in some of the cases the emergence of zoonotic diseases are occurred. Like previously, like recently, the COVID started from animals reportedly, and similarly swine flu. So I think there should be boundaries and there should be proper management practices if we want to protect the human beings from the ill effects of the animals transmitted diseases. Similarly, climate change, which is also SDG 8, and forest, climate change, environment, and food security, they are linked together. So I think holistically, if you are talking One Health would be ensured if you are having proper forest management, wildlife management, and climate change management. So if there are scientific management practices in all these sectors, I think we will be enabled to ensure the good quality health of the human beings. Next. So why the diseases are spread from animals to human beings and human beings to animals? Like, for example, if we are talking of the deforestation and other land use changes, if there is non-scientific cutting of trees, ultimately the environment will be degraded, and some of the pests or the pathogens will be having conducive environment to survive. So ultimately, when there will be abundance of the pathogens and disease-inducing agent, they will be transmitted to human beings, leading to different microbial sort of or viral diseases. So this is very important that illegally and poorly regulated wildlife trade should be banned, climate change should be considered, and unsafe handling of wild animal meat should be properly handled, and then there should be intensified agriculture and livestock production. So I think this chart depicts that we should go for scientific management of livestock, crops, wildlife, climate change, and forest cutting, because ultimately, if we are not going to take care of all these sectors, it will lead to abundance of pathogens and viruses, which will affect the human health. Now coming to the forest and human psyche. Forests are generally associated with enhanced collective and community well-being, especially indigenous people establish a link between individual and community health, as well as between healthy land and healthy people. So this shows that forest having a good effect on the community health, and if we are having healthy body, it will be having healthy mind. So we can think over different issues, and we can resolve many issues if we are having free of diseases health facilities. Similarly, forest degradation and deforestation have been observed to cause negative mental health effects for indigenous and other rural populations. Non-availability of impact mental well-being of among Pygmy tribes in the Congo Basin, and has been properly reported one of the writer, and this is the reference. Deforestation also affects the collecting locally important non-wood forest products, as well as deterioration of landscape and site of personal and community significance. If we go for massive deforestation, ultimately the non-wood forest products or non-timber forest products will be vanished from that area, and the people will not be having any mushrooms or the wild fruits or some of the microorganisms on which they are feeding. So I think the maintenance of forest is very important, and if we go even for cutting of trees, that should be scientific, and properly mature trees and a proper forest action plan should be demarcated, and then we should go only for the mature trees if they have completed the rotation life. And then if some of the trees are cut down from the forest, they will be replaced with the new plants, either through regeneration or new saplings. Similarly, environmental changes have been seen to cause psychic or existential stress and loss of identity, like if there is a huge increase in the temperature, or if there are changes in the precipitation patterns, it ultimately having also a negative impact on the human psychology, and ultimately the human beings become stressful, and they get anxiety of such like situations. So I think as a human beings and as responsible nations, we are supposed to maintain the forest for the existence of our ecosystem and for ensuring proper health standards of our nations. Next. Now coming to the cultural, spiritual, and mental health, like forest are having cultural significance and is key to the spiritual health of individuals and communities, which underlies local efforts to protect nature and conserve forests. So some of the communities, as I mentioned about the some of the countries in Asia, like they are supposed to take care of the nearby forest because they know that their livelihood and their freedom and happiness depends on the local forest trees which are available in their surroundings. Forests that are considered sacred account for an estimated 5 to 10% of global forest area. Some communities consider that forests are quite sacred and that they will go for cutting, and even in the holy book of Muslims, Quran, some of the plants have been reported, like olive, which is called zaytun. It has been mentioned in 6 ayah of the Quran, and the Quran emphasizes that zaytun olive plants, similarly apples and a number of fruits, they have been mentioned. So I think it is also having significance in most of the religions that deforestation should be avoided, and if even there is a need, that should be judicious and under proper forest management system. In northern Cambodia, about 18,000 hectares of rare lowland evergreen forest has been conserved by reverence for the example and teaching of Buddha, and has been focal in post-Khmer Rouge community recovery C2010. So it shows that in Cambodia, due to the relevance in Buddha's teaching, the people are taking care of the forest, and even the post-Khmer Rouge recovery plan also focused on the conservation of forests. Next. Now coming to the medicines from forest, as we know that diseases pose a particular challenge to the survival of forest people. So they are definitely relying on the local shrubs and herbs which are available in the forest, and they go to take it as a medicine. Then transmissible diseases are particularly diverse in forest ecosystem, especially moist and hot tropical ecosystem. Forest communities are often remote from the health services. So that is the reason that they go for herbs and shrubs to be consumed as a medicine. WHO estimates that at least 80% of the world's population depends on traditional medicines to meet primary health care needs. In all major tropical regions, local knowledge of medicinal plants constitute a major part of traditional healthcare system, such as Ayurvedic medicines in India. In India and even Pakistan, Ayurvedic medicines, which are mostly composed of the plant origin, they are consumed by the local people, and especially the rural people having a sort of affiliation to consume those sort of medicines in comparison to the allopathic medicines. So traditional healthcare systems are crucial for sustaining lives, particularly in areas where formal healthcare systems are absent. So the people are relying on the traditional systems. Now, coming to the medicines from forest plant species are commonly used to treat snake bite, asthma, jaundice, dropsy, gynecological problem, piles, elephantiasis, bronchitis, rheumatism, leprosy, diabetes, cancer, pneumonia, paralysis, peritonitis, ulcers, dysentery, cough, skin diseases, fever, and lactation insufficiency, etc. So here I would mention that, for example, in Pakistan, we are having one of the wild type of fruit, which is having resemblance with sort of apricot. It is consumed like jam, ginny, and it's a natural cure to jaundice. So I think similarly, some of the medicines, the herbal medicines, they are used for treatment of the skin diseases and some for the ulcers and piles. Now, in Western Ghana, plant-based medicines are used to cure ailments such as malaria, typhoid, fever, diarrhea. So it's not only in Asia, but even in African communities, most of the herbal and shrubs sort of medicines, they are used for treatment of the diseases. In Central Africa, leafy vegetables, slightly unripe fruits such as jojoba, berry, acacia pods, and tamarinds flowers are used for the treatment of diarrhea and hemorrhoids, constipation, and stomach ache. So these are some of the common diseases, and for that purpose, the Central African people go for using jojoba, acacia pods, custard apple, various barks such as acacia or cola. They are very common. They are used for treatment of the parasites. Bark is used in most of the countries. In China, almost 5,000 to 26,000 native plant species are used as drugs. Similarly, in rural Uganda, they sell herbal medicines worth $189 million. So it depicts that forests are providing a number of traditional medicinal herbs and shrubs which are consumed even in all continents. Now, forest pharmaceuticals, commercial pharmaceutical products are also derived from the tropical forest species like quinine, which is an antimalarial drug, which is derived from the Chona species. Cancer-treating drugs from rosy periwinkle, it is one of the chrysanthemum sort of Catharensis roses, so it is derived from there. Developing countries export medicinal plants resources to developing countries at cheaper rates, but import the pharmaceutical made from there at very high prices. So I think that on one hand, if we are providing raw material in the shape of herbs and shrubs, so on the other hand, we are taking the pharmaceutical drugs and they are imported from the developed world. Improved ability to harness these resources would have a positive impact on healthcare delivery in developing countries. Next. Now coming to promoting good health of forest people, policy and institutions are important in shaping forest contribution to food and health. There should be substantial forest management, securing land tenure rights, and access of local people to forest for their livelihoods and health-giving products. Providing a strong incentive to conserve forest resources, harmonizing environmental conservation, socioeconomic and cultural targets, and hunting and trade wild animal poses a special concern. Trade in endangered species and transmission of zoonotic diseases, which need to be curtailed. So if you are tracking that the environment of forest and wildlife should be conserved, so for that purpose, all the countries should have a proper policy system, so that we can ensure sustainable forest management, and there should be land tenuring rights to the community, and the local people should be given some sort of access to derive only their livelihood to an extent, not just to overexploit those resources and damage those resources permanently, but we are supposed to ensure the sustainability factor in using the forest and its resources. Promoting a good health of forest people also include to ensure their livelihood and income generation opportunities for community, and also to promote the sale of sustainable harvested forest products and enhance the income of the poorest people for better health and food security and nutrition. And for that purpose, women play a key role in use of natural resources for nutrition and health, like They are supposed to go for collection and sterilization, collecting and sterilizing water, collecting fuel, providing food and medicines for the household, custodian of traditional knowledge on local biodiversity, transforming it into edible and medical products and sustainable management. So in this case, the female, especially the rural female, are very important, and they need to be properly trained, and their capacity need to be developed, that they should only collect the unused fuel from the forest just for cooking purposes or for using to sterilize the water which is consumed to reduce the microbial and the viral sort of diseases which are mostly the waterborne. And in case of the medicinal plants, they also need to be trained so that it could be properly and scientifically handled, and it can be used properly. Forest health of urban industrialized society, as far as that is concerned, 55% of the global population lives in urban areas, which is expected to increase to 68% by 2050, as per UN report of 2019. And urban peri-urban forest trees help mitigate many of the drawbacks of living in urban areas, like buffer nights reduce the urban heat, providing green spaces for exercise, recreation, and recovery, and captures particulate matter of up to 10 microns and diameter. Trees absorb pollution from traffic and industry, thus shields against respiratory disease. So it shows, this slide is basically focusing on the urban forestry. So in case of urban areas, we are supposed to go for encouraging the green belts, because it is having a soothing and good effect on the human health, and they are used for recreational purposes or for taking exercises. And besides that, it is a sort of buffer between the traffic areas and the living areas. So I think it reduces the noise, and the noise pollution is reduced, and ultimately it's also a source of reducing carbon in that area and having maximum extraction of the oxygen through the process of photosynthesis. So it enables you that you are having fresh air to breathe. Now it is also having mental health benefits. 14% of the global burden of diseases is attributed to mental health disorders, with 75% affected people coming from low-income countries. Mental health problems, depression, anxiety disorder, and alcohol, drugs disorders are common in developing countries. Mental illness is estimated to have total cost of more than 600 billion euro. So forest visits enhance perceived mental status, vitality, and support the renewal of direct attention capacity. So basically it shows that in most of the countries, forests are having a good impact on the mental health of the people, because in some of the countries, the people go for medication for to reduce depression, anxieties, and use alcohol. But if we provide them the ample opportunities that how in a natural way, in a sustainable way, they can take care of their health by providing them the positive activities of taking exercise or recreational sort of activities. Like it is very common in Australia that in urban areas, they are having the green belts, having the facilities that the people can use for barbecues and for like they are having the playlands for the kids. If the family go out from the urban area to these green belts, they enjoy their weekends, and the kids are also having good time to spend there. And it also leads to a good family life and healthy environmental situation. So green spaces and forest environments assist in the recovery of stress. Lack of interaction with nature during early life has been associated with a number of emotional, cognitive, and physical difficulties in children. And residential surrounding greenness and use of green spaces result in reduced rate of attention. So it is in some of the developed countries, they have developed the SOPs that if we are going to develop the urban areas, it should have the green belts and some sort of the parks, so that the people have leisure time over there and they can go for extracurricular activities to have soothing effect on their health. Next. This diagram shows that the health and well-being is interlinked to a number of activities like the nature is explained on the previous slides, that basically the nature, the physical environment, and all sort of climate related issues can be taken care by if we are having forest covers and if we are interlinked with the reduced environmental degradation processes and other areas as explained earlier. Next. Direct consumption of forest food. It is also worth to note that about 2 billion people are micronutrient deficient, and forest food, though have a small role in terms of calories, they form a critical part of diet in rural communities and food insecure population. Forest food aid variety to predominantly staple diets, wild products, herbs, leaves, nuts, meats, and similarly, it is a source of fat, proteins, vitamins, minerals, carbohydrates of around 1 billion people in the world. Household income data from 7,975 rural households in 24 developing countries across 3 continents found. Then 77% of the households harvested wild food for subsistence. This has been reported by one of the author, Hegde et al. In 2016, that 7,975 people derive their food from forest. Now coming to the direct consumption of forest foods are particularly nutritious and culturally important to indigenous communities. And a study of 22 countries in Asia and Africa found that indigenous communities use on average 120 wild foods per community. In India, it is estimated that approximately 50 million households supplement their diet with fruits gathered from wild lands, forests, and surrounding bushlands. In Nepal, individual households collect as much as 160 kilogram of wild mushrooms per year for direct consumption. A study in South Africa found that 62% of children and a sample of 850s supplemented their diet with wild food, and 30% relied on wild food for over 50% of their diet. So these international references depict that forests are having ample contribution in the diet of the communities. Then coming to another survey, which was conducted on 17,000 households in 28 European countries, found that 25% of the household consumed forest food they had gathered themselves. Forest products like cassava, taro, yam, and sweet potatoes are among the major sources of carbohydrates. Raisins, sapes, gums, and honey are rich in protein and minerals. Mushrooms are rich in minerals, vitamins, and amino acids. Wild vegetables contribute important vitamins and minerals. Excuse me. And similarly, specific non-wood forest products can help address particular nutritional deficiency. So, keeping in view all these studies and references, either from European countries, African countries, or Asian countries, shows that the forest products are source of a number of important micro and macronutrients which are essential for the human health. Now coming to the forest insects consumptions as a food. Small insects, caterpillars, and snails are also important source of animal protein and fat. Forest caterpillars, for example, contain even more protein, fats, and energy than meat or fish. Insects are currently a cheap and accessible source of nutritious food, supplementing the diet of approximately 2 billion people, mainly in Asia, Africa, and Latin America. Worldwide, human consumes more than 1,900 insect species, of which the most common are beetle. Colapra is one of the class of the insects. Caterpillars, Lepidoptera, 18% in bees, wasps, and ants. So this has been reported by Wayne Hughes et al. In 2013 that all these insects are also part of the human diet. Now coming to the non-wood forest products as food, like they are nuts, seeds, they are source of protein, energy, and similarly green leaves sort of plants, they are source of vitamin A, and if there is a deficiency of vitamin A, it leads to blindness, and in extreme cases, it also leads to death. Similarly, the bush meat, green leaves, they're having iron, and if someone is anemic, by using this bush meat, green leaves, the iron deficiency could be addressed. Similarly, babu, bosika, these are some of the plants, herbs, which are used for vitamin B3. Niacin deficiency can be controlled by the use of this green vegetable. And then riboflavin, vitamin B2 is also in green leaves, which are there in a number of species found in either green leaves or in insects. Vitamin C, which is also various it is very common in citruses, also guava, and a number of other leafy vegetables. And if these are consumed, we can address the deficiency of vitamin C. Now, dietary diversity. Forest foods contribute to diet diversity because it diversify your diet intake. Diverse diet increases the diversity of the gut microbiome for improved health, because it improves your metabolism. And a study of data from 43,000 households across 27 countries in Africa found that the dietary diversity of children exposed to forest was 45% higher as compared to children who were not exposed to forest. Now coming to the income diversification, like employment generation, formal or informal, it can be ensured through forest. Then technology and value addition processes increase income share of the local people, increases their ability to buy food and medicines and obtain health care. Forest sector has created 54 million full-time equivalent jobs, including 13 million in the formal sector, above 0.4% of the global workforce, and 41 million in the informal sector. It has been reported by FAO in 2014. Small and medium-sized forest enterprises may account for up to 80 to 90% of employment in all forest enterprises, formal and informal, and has been reported by World Bank in 2016. And Palanga village women invested 48% of their forest income in nutrition and 24% in healthcare. So it shows that if you are getting a handsome return from the forest products or non-forest products, it could be used for investment in education sector. It can be invested in the health sector. So I think it not only addresses that your own food requirements are met, but if you can diversify your source of income, it can be invested in a number of ways and ultimately leads to high standards of your life. Now, forest and rural income, forest rural incomes and nutrition, like forest goes for the forest food. It is like a sort of pollinator, non-food forest products, mother time, like in some of the cases, the babies are given some of the products which most of the mothers in the Asian countries prefer, like honeys, like mushrooms, and some of the herbs which are used for the pain of the abdomen. So it reduces the mother's time. Then forest ultimately is having sort of support to the mothers to take care of their babies. And then the agricultural techniques. So ultimately it leads to cash income and dietary diversity. So forest foods, pollinator, so forest provides you not only the wood, but other forest products, which included the leafy vegetables and herbs, shrubs, and medicinal plants. And then the pollinators In case of some of the pollens, they are used for selling or even for treatment of some of the diseases. And then it ultimately leads to increase your cash income, and it can be invested either in your health standards improvement, or it can be used for educating your kids, or it can enable you to buy other products which are need to you. So now this slide shows that the household income from non-wood forest products. This bar chart is from 2018 from FAO, and it shows that in most of the countries, the non-wood forest products, they are fetching good income for the household. Like starting from Bangladesh, it's more than 10, then leading to Sahel and Congo basins is high, and similarly in Sudan. So these are some of the countries which are getting the non-wood forest products income, and the households are getting benefited. Next. Now, forest and water, like I mentioned that some of the diseases are waterborne, and for that matter, the family and the household collect the fuel oil and go for boiling and sterilizing water, which is then consumed for treatment, and ultimately they get protected themselves from diarrhea and other microbial diseases. And estimated 1.38 billion people in Africa, Asia, Latin America, and the Caribbean and Oceania treat drinking water by boiling it. So this is a common practice in most of the countries, and similarly, 765 million people, which is about 10.9% of the global population, use wood fuel for this purpose, and it has been reported by FAO. Clean water is also needed to wash food, for general household hygiene, and for treating wounds. So it's very common in all of our communities that the people prefer to have clean water for their household consumption and for even for their own consumption. Now, this slide shows the region-wise reliance on fuel oil. So the most reliance is more than 60%, 63% in Africa, while in Northern America is less than 1%. Europe is 3%, and Latin America is 13%. Asia and Oceania is 38%. So Asia is following Africa, but the reliance on fuel oil of Africans is very high. That is 63%. Next. Now, coming to the hazards of fuel oil, if we are consuming fuel oil for burning, it also is having some negative impacts, like the smoke, which is created pose serious human health risk, especially indoors. Like if we are burning the fuel oil indoor, it leads to reduce the oxygen, and ultimately there is no fresh oxygen for breathing. Household air pollution is created, and WHO estimated that 3 billion people, low and middle income countries, use polluting fuels, biomass, or dung cake, crop residues, and charcoal for burning purposes, which ultimately is having negative health hazards. Smoke from solid fuels, including coal and biomass, is associated with around 4 billion deaths and has been reported by WHO in 2018. Because the pulmonary diseases and the lung diseases, stroke, lung cancer, and coronary heart diseases are caused due to smoke. Malnourishment and nutritional deficiency is very common in some of the communities, and it ultimately leads to susceptibility to diseases. They are more prone to diseases because of the poor quality of the air. Women and children are particularly exposed to risk from the cooking, because mostly the women folk is concerned with cooking in their house. So mostly they are taking care of the kids as well. So sometimes they are having the kids and ultimately the smoke is inhaled by those accompanied kids and ultimately leads to many consequences, especially the lung diseases. Fuel load also causes burns and injuries and also contribute to climate-related risks like the emission of carbon dioxide, methane, and black carbon. And oat fuel have lower carbon footprints than fossil fuels if managed sustainably. Smoke from domestic fuel is supposed to repel mosquitoes, vectors, but domestic cooking is done mostly outside the peaks, biting time. It is presumed that it is also a sort of repellent of the mosquitoes, but mostly when the cooking is process made at that time, it's not the peak time that it acts as a repellent for the mosquitoes. Next. So advantages of forest in promotion of health and nutrition, like sustainable regional, national forestry and health policies are needed. Focus should be on forest and old lands and around town and cities. There should be enhanced collaboration among forestry, conservation, land use, and urban planning experts so that to ensure the public health. Forest accounts for 64% of the total land area and 81.3% of the population visit forest more than once a year. Media coverage can raise awareness regarding therapeutic functions of the forest, use of forest facilities by medical groups. Advantages of forest also includes like the Korea Forest Services has formalized the concept of forest for human well-being and launched a forest healing program using specific therapy centers. New Zealand has pioneered green prescriptions recommended for physical activity and diet that recognize added benefits of exercising in nature. Nature prescriptions is also being tried in Scotland. In Germany, public health insurance cover the use of forest for health purposes. Copenhagen, the therapy of forest garden. Acadia offers nature-based treatment to people suffering from stress-related diseases. So a number of developed countries use forest, trees and forest cover for the treatment of their ailing population. Next. Now the way forward and recommendation as IRD expert, while knowing the importance of forests related to health, it is proposed that forests are essential in achieving sustainable development goals, because as I mentioned that if you are talking of poverty, if you are talking of the food security, climate change, environment, clean drinking water, all they are related, and forest in some way directly or indirectly are related to some of the SDG goals. So we are supposed that there should be coherence and correlation of the interventions related to SDGs in forest and health. Promotion, the linkages between forest and human health contribution directly or indirectly to achieve all SDGs. Sustainable forest management through which the economic, social, and environmental values of all types of forest are maintained and enhanced for the benefit of present and future generation, because we are supposed not to over-exploit the existing forest cover, but rather some of the countries who have started good programs like if you are talking of the climate change and sustainable environment, we are supposed to go for more forest cover and not only to over-exploit the forest through cuttings, but we should also go for regeneration. And there should be some programs while the plantation seasons should be celebrated through school children, through the communities, and they should be encouraged to take active participation in the urban plantation as well as in the rural and forest plantation. Effective, well-implanted and well-enforced forest policies and management are necessary to secure the health and nutrition functions of the forest and deliver their benefit to citizens. So we are supposed to educate the citizens that forests are having close coherence with their health and also with their environment. And if we are posing we are having future challenges in terms of the climate change and environment. I think if we go for the scientific management of forest, we can address most of these issues. Next. The human health benefits of forest and people need are interdependent. Thus, these contexts should be taken into consideration when planning measures for promoting human health and nutrition benefit as an element of sustainable forest management. Countries should also adopt one health framework emphasizing collaborative policy making and partnership across all relevant sectors such as forest, agriculture, health, nutrition, food security, water, livestock, environment, and tourism. The COVID-19 pandemic presents a prime opportunity for emphasizing and taking collaborative actions. A network of platform of experts, practitioners, and policymakers is indispensable. We are supposed to, at Asia level or from CIRDAP level, it would be my recommendation that there should be a platform of the policymaker having representation from the health experts, forest experts, and agriculturists, so that they can issue some sort of advisories or go for training of the practitioners, so that it could be replicated and they can act like master trainers to train the other people, so that they can have a good knowledge of the forest and health management. So that's all from my side. And if there are any suggestions and any comments and any questions, they are welcome, and I would appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Israr, for a very comprehensive presentation. Now we have about almost half an hour for question and answer. So I would like to invite the participants to introduce yourself and then ask the question, please, or comments. If you are not ready yet, I can ask a few questions to the speaker. As you know, the International Day of Forests, we could look at the Sustainable Development Goal, in particular, goal number 15, life on land, as well as the number 13, climate action. I have one thing that I like to ask you. Forest has role to play in climate mitigation. For example, reforestation. However, I read one article from National University of Singapore. They make a survey of forest area in Southeast Asia. And they found that there are plenty of land that can be used for reforestation. But however, this land include also small farmers area. And if excluding this small farmer area, it will leave only very little area for reforestation. So, and the paper suggests that we should do a kind of agroforestry. That means that engage farmers to understand the role of forests and be able to participate and helping in reforestation. So this is one of the comments by the paper that I read. That is one thing that I like you to comment on that. The second one, now we are facing air pollution. And when we talk about forests in the peri-urban area and agriculture as well, you can find that in Asia Pacific, people are having open burning after harvesting. And this produces a black carbon emission immensely, and it affects not only that country, but also a neighbor country. So this kind of thing, as I know, those people who create that fire know about it, the problem, but they don't have the tools or knowledge to find out alternatives in order to get rid of after agricultural harvesting, and that may create also forest fire. If you look at the satellite image in this region, you could find that there are so many hotspot area, and these are our problem in the present time. So like you to comment on that also. So this is the beginning of suggestion and questions, please.
Thank you, Director General. As far as your first question and comment is concerned, that in Singapore University, you have read that most of the countries are having land, small land holding is there. And if they could go for practicing the agroforestry, I think the issue of the environment could be addressed to a greater extent. In that context, I would agree with you that agroforestry is very important, and it will not only enable the farmers to get the agriculture produce, but also will get the timber and wood. But in that case, we are supposed to go for the maximum persuasion of the farmers that they should know the importance of the trees, and they should be given some training that how they are supposed to go for plantation of the forest trees or for the large trees, because in some of the cases the farmers are reluctant and they don't go for plantation of the trees because it is having a shed on the crops, and ultimately the production of the crops is not good, because in shady places the crops don't grow properly. So for that matter, the dimension of the plantation of the trees, that is essential to be shown to the farmers so that they can be persuaded that it's not going to affect their productivity. So ultimately they will be getting forest crop as well as the grain crop or the agriculture crops. Besides that, I would mention that some of the forest trees are having allelopathic or autotoxic effect, which means that some of the species are releasing some of the toxins which are having negative impact on the crops. So that is the reason that in most of the countries, the people presume that it is not a good tree and it is having some sort of negative impact on our crops. So for that purpose, we are supposed to go for introduction of such like trees which are having less allelopathic or autotoxic effect on the crops. So it is very essential that first of all, the plantation of the trees and then the relevance of the tree, that it is having no negative impact on the nearby crops. But I would mention that it is having a very positive impact in cases of the areas where the sand is sandy, the soil is sandy and the crops are grown there. But in case of the sand dunes are blown away by the air, by the winds, and it goes to deposit the crops which are standing in the fields. So for that purpose, we can go for fencing of the boundaries of the fields through the forest trees, because it work like a shelter built to reduce the wind velocity, and the sands are not going to deposit on the crops. So these are my stock take on the issue of the agroforestry and plantation of the trees on the agricultural lands. As far as you mentioned that there are issues of the forest fires, then the biomass of the agriculture crops, that is also burnt by the farmers. Stubborns of the crops, they are burnt by, and it ultimately leads to smoke and some negative consequences to the environment. So here I would mention that you have rightly pointed out, and you might be aware of the fact in some of the countries, like the most of the developing countries, and brick lanes, the used vehicle tires are burnt for making of the bricks. Brick lanes, because they need fuel, and they, along with fuel, also burn the tires, which ultimately release SO2 like sulfur dioxide. And sulfur dioxide react with water, and then the sulfuric acid is formed, or like chlorine sort of content is burnt in the brick lanes, and then hydrochloric acid is formed while reacting with the water vapors. And ultimately, acid rains have been reported in some of the countries. So some of the regulations and laws need to be enforced, like the environmental laws, to abstain the brick lanes from burning of tires and from the chlorinated sort of material. Then coming to the question of like burning of the ratoons of some of the crops, or the staples of the crops. So the most of the farmers use that practice to sterilize the soil, because soil are having a number of insects and pathogens, and once one crop is harvested, so they go for making a fire on the residues of the previous crop. So ultimately, they are of the concept that it's going to sterilize their land from the previous insect eggs and diseases. So that is one practice, and that need to be looked into properly, that either their concept is true or wrong. And you are right that recently forest fires have been reported in most of the countries, like even in Pakistan, we have practiced in the last summers a number of forest fires. Then in Australia, there was a huge forest fire. So I think for that purpose, we are supposed to go for the management practices, like we should have proper response force as well. And then we should also have the proper mulching practices, like the exposed area should be covered with either with the bushes or the herbs, so that there should be less evaporation from that soil which is exposed, and the moisture content should be there, so that it couldn't be so heated up, which can lead to fires in the nearby forest. So I think the management is very important, and then the mulching and the smothering, which is like spreading of the sheets and the straws on the exposed area, it could be of benefit to protect the forest fires. So anything, if any expert can add, that would be appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you very much. There is a question in the chat box. I could read that question from Professor Wong Popo, the CIRDAP expert. He mentioned that this is a very good presentation, and forests are indeed essential. But unfortunately, global deforestation still prevails, especially in some large tropical countries. When can the global afforestation reverse this trend? Any possible date by SDG date? Your clarification, please.
Actually, if you look into the SDGs goal, like we are supposed to comply with the SDGs by 2027. I suppose that were the major target dates, but I think most of the countries are lagging behind. And in our country, we started a number of initiatives, like first, that was the billion tree tsunami, then 10 billion tree tsunami. But you know that most of the developing countries are recently facing the problems of finances, and that is the reason that some of the activities which were in pipeline and in the process of implementation have been derailed. So I think for that purpose, we are supposed to make an awareness in the communities and the general people to take active part. Like it should be the responsibility of each and every citizen of this world that to go for the accomplishment of the SDGs. Like if I'm affluent, I'm having the good life standards, I can go for my contribution in the reduction of the poverty. Like I can assist some of the people, or I can train them, or I can render my service to train their kids in some of the productive activities. So I think it's the responsibility of each and everybody in this universe that if we want that there should be sustainable environment and sustainable world for the future generations, I think we should play an active role. But still, there is ample room, and I think most of the countries would not be in a better position to comply with the target date of SDGs. Thank you.
Respected Dr. Israr, I think that the date of SDG for SDG 15, it's set by 2020, before 2030. You know, they said that promote implementation of sustainable management of all types of forests, halt deforestation, restore degraded forests, and substantially increase afforestation and deforestation globally. And this is set by 2020. It's already passed. So what shall we do now?
So thank you for getting me corrected, and you are right that basically 2020 has passed, and since we are in 2023, but still we are lagging behind that target. But I think there is a need that as responsible citizens of every nation, we are supposed to take active part. And for that matter, I would propose that even the school kids, the elderly people, the women and the youth, even each and everybody of every nation is supposed to take active part, because we are posing a huge threat from the climate. And recently the flash floods in Pakistan and the nearby countries, they have badly affected our climate. So I think it's our responsibility, but still, even there should be a sort of focus from the UN agencies as well, like the UN agencies are taking up with different developing countries and developed countries, that they should go for the agroforestry, even afforestation, and should reduce their reliance on the forest road. So I think you are right, but it is our responsibility to take active part along with others to contribute our own part. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So now I would like to have other participants to ask questions. Is your opportunity? You still have 10 more minutes, please. You can also write in the chat box if you don't want to ask the question directly. Please write in the chat box. I just want to refer back to your answer to my question concerning the agroforestry and how to engage farmers and community. I don't know whether we have a kind of mapping of the area that we could inform decision maker that their policy should be focused on those areas in order to mitigate any kind of impact on forests. And this kind of thing maybe need to research on who have done this kind of mapping in different countries, especially in countries that we need to look into the issues. And it will be duties for certain interministerial organization to work together for a local advocacy, local discussion with this farmer on how they could plan for their own areas, because different area we have different plan, and this kind of thing takes some time, and mostly government would like to do their own forestation, and that will not involve any people, but to involve people it's more difficult and takes time. So this kind of thing we should provide some kind of mapping so that urgency or special attention should be focused on particular area that we can because we cannot do everything at the same time. We can plan for this urgency first, and then it can be the pilot demonstration, and then we can apply adaptive management that working with community. In some country called community-based reforestation or something like that. So how do you think about this?
So thank you very much, Director General. Basically, you are right that first of all, we are supposed to find out that if some countries have carried out the mapping of the areas which can be targeted first. So I would just mention here that in case of the Billion Tree Tsunami project in our country, here you know that the forest saplings were not enough to be planted, but the government encouraged the private people that they should go for establishment of their nurseries. So the Forest Department and Agriculture Department provided them seed, and they were given the assistance to raise the plants. And then there was a buyback guarantee that those nurserymen are supposed to provide plants to the government. And then the government, with the assistance of the local communities and school children's and a number of organizations, they went for massive plantation of different areas, like the patches. First of all, those patches which were of the state land, they were targeted. And you might have gone through an example of the Sri Lanka, because they went for the aerial plantation of the trees, like they got the seed and it was then dropped from the air. With the balls of the soil, moist soil. So I think they dropped those soil balls, moist balls with seed of the trees on the mountains and different regions. So that could be one of the practice, but you know that all these sort of activities need a huge funding. But if we go for development of some sort of entrepreneurship of activities with the farmers and the local rural areas, I think it can have critical mass after some time, like 5 years, 10 years. But I think once the people know the importance and they're having easy access to plants, I think you know that with the excessive advocacy, we can persuade the people that plants are very important, and especially forest, and it's having a good impact on their health standards. So I think that was one of the way wherein the government encouraged the private people to go for establishment of the forest plant nurseries, and then there was buyback guarantee. But I think if we want to have the sustainability of this factor, for that matter, there should be strong resolve among the nations, and for that matter, we will have to go for massive campaign to motivate the people to go for such like drives. That's my take from Pakistan.
Thank you very much. May I turn microphone to the communication officer, please?
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for your wonderful webinar presentation, and thank you, sir, our Honorable Director General. This is the end of our webinar. So thank you all for joining us. You can find this presentation of our IRD expert in our website in a few moments. So thank you all, and have a nice day. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, madam.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you, sir. Have a good day.